Welcome to Fog Street Mysteries, where every story begins in shadows and every clue glows under a single street lamp. Don't forget to share thoughts. Your feedback keeps the mystery alive. Now let's begin. Nero Wolfe and the Ashes of Betrayal. Nero Wolfe uncovers a dead man's secret noir mystery. Chapter 1, Smoke in the Brownstone. If Nero Wolfe ever decided to advertise, he could save money by hanging a sign that read, "No nonsense before beer." It was 4:15 on a Thursday afternoon, which put us exactly 45 minutes away from the sacred hour, and the boss was already showing symptoms. His eyes had narrowed to slits of disapproval behind the rimless spectacles, and his fingers were steepled in a way that warned against sudden movements or unnecessary syllables. I was at my desk, feet up, pretending to balance accounts that would never balance themselves, while the familiar perfume of orchids drifted down from the plant room like a threat. Outside, West 35th Street was doing what it always did, taxis honking, pedestrians arguing with destiny, and the city grinding its teeth. That was when the doorbell rang. Wolfe didn't move. He never did. He turned his head a fraction of an inch in my direction, which in Wolfe language translates to "This is your mess." I sighed, folded my ledger, and went to the door. The woman standing there didn't belong on our stoop. She had the posture of someone accustomed to being announced, not buzzing buzzers. Mid-30s, expensive coat, gloves that had never known housework, and eyes that looked like they'd spent the last few nights staring at ceilings instead of sleeping under them. She was holding a small, sealed urn. "I'm here to see Mr. Nero Wolfe," she said. "Lucky you," I told her. "He's home. I'm Archie Goodwin. Come in before the city decides to swallow you." She hesitated just long enough to suggest that coming in might change her life for the worse. Then she stepped inside. Wolfe regarded her as he would a questionable ingredient. Slowly. Critically. Without enthusiasm. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, voice steady but tight, "my name is Eleanor Vance." Wolfe inclined his head by a millimeter. "Be seated, Miss Vance." "Archie." I took the urn from her and placed it on the table between Wolfe and the chair she took. It was heavier than it looked. "That," she said, nodding at it, "contains the ashes of my brother." Wolfe's eyes flicked to the urn, then back to her face. "Indeed. I fail to perceive the necessity of my involvement." "That's because," she said carefully, "those ashes are not my brother's." That got his attention. Not a lot, but enough. I leaned against the desk. "You're saying somebody mixed up the remains?" "I'm saying," she replied, "that my brother did not die in that fire." Wolfe frowned. "Your brother was Caleb Vance," she said. "Founder and senior partner of Vance and Rourke Imports. He was declared dead 6 weeks ago when his country house burned to the ground." "Declared," Wolfe repeated. "By whom?" "The police. The coroner. Everyone who wanted it simple." I watched Wolfe's fingers separate and rejoin. "A good sign." "Why," he asked, "do you believe the ashes are fraudulent?" She swallowed. "Because my brother never wore dental work. The report says the remains had 2 gold crowns. That did it." Wolfe leaned back in his chair, shifting his considerable bulk with care. "Proceed." She told it cleanly. Too cleanly, maybe. The fire had been blamed on faulty wiring. Caleb Vance had been alone, supposedly asleep. The body had been burned beyond recognition. The ashes had been delivered 3 days later, sealed and certified. But Caleb was cautious, she said. Obsessively so. He never slept in the main house. He stayed in the guest wing. And he never had dental work. I glanced at Wolfe. He was listening now. Not just hearing. "Who benefited from your brother's death?" Wolfe asked. She hesitated. "Answer," he said mildly. "My brother's partner," she said. "Leonard Rourke. Also his wife. And his secretary. And possibly all of them. An abundance of beneficiaries, Wolfe murmured. Always encouraging. I stepped in. Miss Vance, did your brother have enemies? She almost smiled. Only people who loved him. Wolfe snorted. Love is not a mitigating circumstance. There was a pause. Wolfe glanced at the clock. 4:30. Archie, he said, beer. I went to the fridge. The conversation could survive 30 seconds without me. When I returned, Wolfe took a long, reverent swallow. Miss Vance, I will be explicit. I dislike ashes. They are untidy, final, and frequently deceptive. However, you have presented an anomaly. An anomaly suggests intelligence. She leaned forward. Will you take the case? I have not yet decided, Wolfe said. What do you want? The truth, she said. And if my brother is alive, protection. If he's dead, justice. Wolfe nodded once. Archie will make inquiries. I will think. Which was Wolfe's version of yes. After she left, I stood staring at the urn. Do you think she's lying? I asked. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly. I think she believes what she said. That's comforting, I muttered. Should I start with the fire or the family? Begin with the fire, Wolfe said. Fires are efficient liars. Also, they offend me. I grinned. I'll take that as encouragement. As I reached the door, Wolfe added, Archie, be alert. Betrayal often smells like smoke long after the fire is out. Outside, the city had darkened, shadows stretching like long memories. I flagged a cab, gave the address of a burned-out country house, and settled back. Ashes on the table. A brother who might not be dead. Too many people smiling at the funeral. It was shaping up to be one of those cases. And those are the ones that never let you walk away clean. Chapter 2, The Man Who Died Twice. If you want to understand New York, spend an hour in a taxi with a driver who thinks the city was designed solely to insult him. I got my full education on the ride upstate, complete with a running sermon on potholes, politicians, and why a man who signals is either a tourist or a liar. The Vance place sat on a rise of land where money had once grown thick and easy. Now it was a charred skeleton behind a temporary fence, the kind of ruin that makes you lower your voice without knowing why. The air still had a faint burnt tang, like the world had held its breath too long. A uniform at the gate looked me over and decided I wasn't the sort to steal ashes. I'm Archie Goodwin, I said, flashing my license. Private investigator. I'm here about the Vance fire. He scratched his jaw. You and everybody else were here 6 weeks ago. Then I'm late to the party, I told him. Let me in anyway. He did, with the bored resignation of a man who knows the world never runs out of trouble. Inside, a county investigator named Harkness met me. Thin, sour, and proud of it. He spoke as if every word cost him a nickel. Case is closed, he said. That's great, I replied. I love closed cases. They're much easier to open. His eyes narrowed. You're from New York City. Last I checked. City people don't like simple answers. We like correct ones, I said. Show me where the body was. He led me across the blackened foundation. The house had been thoroughly helpful, burned everything it could, collapsed neatly, and left behind a greasy darkness that looked permanent. I crouched near a warped beam and ran my fingers along the scorched grain. Electrical, Harkness said. Old wiring. Spark. Whoosh. Man asleep. Tragic. Any witnesses? Neighbor saw flames. Called it in. Any accelerant? He smiled as if I'd asked whether the moon was made of cheese. No evidence. Because there wasn't any, I said. Because the fire burned hot, he corrected. That was my first contradiction. Fires don't conveniently erase what they're supposed to erase unless someone helps them. Wolfe had said fires were efficient liars. Harkness was covering for one. I stood, brushing soot off my hand. The remains. Where were they found? Guest wing, Harkness said. I blinked. Guest wing. He frowned. Main floor. Bedroom off the corridor. What does it matter? It mattered because Eleanor Vance had said Caleb didn't sleep in the main house, he slept in the guest wing. If Harkness was telling the truth now, Eleanor's story had a gap. If Eleanor was right, Harkness had shifted his story. I let it slide. Sliding is an art when you're collecting lies. Who identified the remains? The coroner. Dental records. Dental, I repeated, and watched his face. A flicker, too fast for a civilian, not fast enough for a man who hadn't lied recently. 2 crowns, he said flatly. Match. Caleb Vance had no dental work. Harkness's gaze got harder. You got that from his sister. I got it from my curiosity, I said. Which is a separate medical condition. Where'd you get the dental records? He hesitated, then said, from his office. From who? His partner. Leonard Rourke. There it was. A clean line from ashes to beneficiary. I thanked Harkness with my smile, which has gotten me out of trouble and into it in equal measure, and drove back toward the city. On the way, I stopped at a diner because it was past noon and I'd learned long ago that hunger makes you stupid. The place smelled like fried onions and regret. I took a booth, ordered coffee, and called the brownstone. Fritz answered, his voice calm, patient, and faintly disapproving of America. Mr. Goodwin, he said, Mr. Wolfe is in the plant rooms. Tell him I'm alive and collecting contradictions. I will inform him you have not been arrested, Fritz replied, and hung up. That's Fritz. He can insult you politely and make you want to apologize for surviving. Back in Manhattan, I went straight to Vance and Rourke Imports, a building that smelled like polished wood and expensive fear. The receptionist looked like she'd been trained to say no in 5 languages. I'm here to see Mr. Rourke, I said. Do you have an appointment? I have a personality, I told her. It gets me in many places. She didn't laugh. I pushed anyway, and in 10 minutes I was standing in Leonard Rourke's office, facing a man in his 50s with silver hair and eyes that had learned to stay dry at funerals. Archie Goodwin, I said. Nero Wolfe's office. His lips tightened. Wolfe? This again? Again is a strong word, I said. I'd call it continuing interest in inconvenient facts. He gestured to a chair. Make it quick. Saturday, 6 weeks ago you handed over dental records to identify Caleb Vance's remains. That's correct. Where did you get them? He didn't blink. From his dentist. Dr. Sloat. Caleb was meticulous. He didn't have crowns. Rourke's mouth twitched. He did. Recently. He didn't advertise it. Funny, I said. Most men advertise gold crowns by smiling. Rourke leaned back. What is this about? It's about whether Caleb Vance is dead, I said, watching him. His hand moved, just a small shift on the desk, as if he were stabilizing himself. He's dead, he said. The house burned. He was inside. You were his partner, I said. You'd know his habits. Where did he sleep? Where he pleased, Rourke replied. Usually the main bedroom. That contradicts his sister, I said. His eyes hardened. Eleanor is sentimental. She refuses to accept reality. Sentimental with an urn, I agreed. Tell me, who inherits? He smiled without warmth. Caleb's wife, Marjorie, inherits the controlling share. I retain operational authority. It's all in the partnership agreement. Which means you keep the business, I said. And she keeps the money. Caleb structured it that way. Because he trusted you, I said. Rourke's eyes flicked away for half a second. Because he was practical. I stood. I'll be speaking to Dr. Sloat. Of course, he said, voice polite. Do what you like. But I advise you not to disturb Marjorie. She's fragile. I left with that word sticking to my ribs like a fishbone. Fragile is what men call women they don't want questioned. Outside, the afternoon had turned the color of old brass. I caught a cab back to the brownstone and climbed the steps, where the orchid scent hit me like a familiar warning, sweet, controlled, and impossible to ignore. Wolfe was in the office, seated in the red leather chair as if it had grown around him. Beer at hand. Eyes half closed. Well, he asked. I tossed my hat on my desk. Upstate investigator says remains identified by dental. 2 crowns. Says he got records from Rourke. Rourke says Caleb had crowns recently and Eleanor is sentimental. Wolfe opened his eyes fully. And I don't like the way the story changes depending on who's telling it, I said. Also, the fire burned too clean. And Rourke's advice about not disturbing the widow smelled like a man guarding a lock. Wolfe's fingers steepled. A man who is dead is convenient. A man who is dead twice is profitable. Dead twice? I repeated. Wolfe nodded slowly. Once in public, declared dead in a fire. Once in private, murdered, if indeed he is murdered. The question is whether the ashes represent a substituted body, or whether the death itself is the substitution. I stared at him. That sounded like you swallowed a law book. I swallowed nothing, Wolfe said. Archie, your report suggests a deliberate fabrication. The crowns may be the key, or the lure. We shall consult the dentist. And we shall speak to the widow. Sentimentality is not a diagnosis, it is an excuse. You want me to go see Mrs. Vance? I want you to observe her, Wolfe corrected. Then I want you to return and allow me to think without interruption. Perfect, I said. I'll do the walking, you'll do the genius. Wolfe raised his beer in a slight salute. An equitable arrangement. I headed for the door, already feeling the city's cold hands on the back of my neck. Somewhere in this mess, a man was either alive and hiding, or dead and being used like a prop. And if there were 2 sets of ashes in play, then somebody had done more than betray a partner. They'd rewritten a death. And in New York, that kind of writing always ends in ink, dark, permanent, and expensive. Chapter 3, Ashes Don't Lie. If ashes could talk, most detectives would be out of work and Nero Wolfe would still refuse to leave his chair. Since ashes don't talk, Wolfe had summoned the next best thing, science, while I was assigned to the less dignified task of annoying people until they contradicted themselves. The urn sat on Wolfe's desk like an accusation. He disliked it. I could tell. Wolfe prefers mysteries that stay put, papers, people, facts. Ashes get everywhere, conceptually and otherwise. They are an abomination, he said, staring at it. Finality masquerading as certainty. That's poetic, I told him. Also a little gloomy for a man with orchids blooming upstairs. Orchids, Wolfe said, are honest. Ashes are not. He pushed a slip of paper toward me. I have arranged for an analysis. Dr. Vollmer will collect a sample. You trust him? I asked. I trust his competence, Wolfe replied. Which is superior to trust? Dr. Vollmer arrived precisely at 11. Thin, spectacled, and reverent in the presence of Wolfe, as most professionals are once they realize he will dismantle their conclusions if they're careless. He took his sample delicately, like a priest handling relics, and departed with a promise to call. While Wolfe returned to his beer in silence, I went back out into the city, because Wolfe thinks best when I'm annoying someone else. My first stop was Marjorie Vance, the widow. She lived in an apartment that had been decorated to reassure visitors that tragedy had not interrupted income. Soft carpets, expensive sadness, and a view of the river that tried too hard to be therapeutic. She received me in black, of course, but tailored black, chosen with intelligence. Her eyes were red in the corners, but her voice was steady. "Another investigator," she said. "Private," I replied. "I specialize in irritating widows." She smiled faintly. "You won't be the first." We sat. She folded her hands. Perfect nails. No rings except the wedding band, which she wore like a reminder rather than a comfort. "Did your husband have dental work?" I asked casually. She blinked. "What?" "Gold crowns," I clarified. "No," she said. "Too fast." "Then, not that I know of." "Did he sleep in the main bedroom?" I asked. "Yes," she said. Then hesitated. "Sometimes. He preferred the guest wing when he worked late." That put her squarely between Eleanor and Rourke. Which is where liars often stand, balancing. "Who last saw your husband alive?" I asked. She inhaled. "His secretary. Julia Brandt. She left the house around 8. "Did she say where Caleb was?" "Working," Marjorie said. "Always working." "Did your husband ever talk about leaving?" I asked. Her eyes sharpened. "Leaving? Business? Marriage? Country?" She looked at the window. "Caleb talked about many things." I left with more questions than answers, which is usually how you know you've asked the right ones. Next was Julia Brandt, the secretary. She worked late and dressed early, the kind of woman who survived on precision and aspirin. Her office was immaculate. Her nerves were not. "You were at the house the night of the fire," I said. "Yes." "What time did you leave?" 8:15. "Where was Mr. Vance?" "In his study," she said. "In the guest wing." I raised an eyebrow. "Not the main bedroom?" She shook her head. "Never. He said the main house creaked too much." That made Eleanor right. Marjorie half right. Rourke wrong. Or lying. "Did Mr. Vance have dental work?" I asked. She frowned. "No. He was proud of his teeth." "Did you ever see gold crowns?" "Never." She hesitated, then added, "Mr. Goodwin, are you saying the ashes aren't his?" "I'm saying ashes don't lie," I said. "People do." When I returned to the brownstone, Wolfe was exactly where I'd left him, chair, beer, gravity intact. The orchids perfumed the air with smug innocence. "Well?" he asked. "3 stories," I said. "None match. Secretary says guest wing, no dental work. Widow waffles on sleeping arrangements, denies crowns. Partner insists on crowns and main bedroom." Wolfe nodded. A triangle of convenience. The phone rang. Wolfe lifted a finger for silence and answered. "Yes." It was Dr. Vollmer. Wolfe listened without interruption, his face still as stone. When he hung up, he regarded the urn with renewed distaste. "The ashes," he said, "belonged to a male approximately 40 years old. Caleb Vance had been 58. There is more," Wolfe continued. "The remains show traces of industrial lime." I whistled softly. "That's not standard crematorium decor." "No," Wolfe said. "It is sometimes used to accelerate decomposition." "So the body was already compromised," I said. "Or altered," Wolfe replied. "The ashes do not match the man they are supposed to represent. That means Caleb Vance was not cremated," Wolfe finished. "At least not in that urn." I leaned back. "So whose ashes are those?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. That is the essential question. The doorbell rang again. Inspector Kramer this time, coat rumpled, patience thinner than usual. "Wolfe," he growled, "you stirring this mess?" "Only gently," Wolfe said. "You may wish to reopen your file." Kramer scowled. "We got a death certificate." "For the wrong man," Wolfe said calmly. Kramer stared at the urn. "You saying that ain't Vance?" "I am saying," Wolfe replied, "that it is a man who died conveniently." Kramer rubbed his face. "You got proof?" "Soon," Wolfe said. "In the meantime, I suggest you locate a man who died shortly before the fire and disappeared from record." Kramer snorted. "That's half the city." "Indeed," Wolfe agreed. "Begin with those connected to Vance." After Kramer left, the office felt tighter, like a room holding its breath. "One more thing," I said. Julia Brandt was nervous. Not guilty nervous. Protective nervous. "Of whom?" Wolfe asked. "Of Caleb," I said. "Or of what he knew." Wolfe closed his eyes. "Betrayal requires proximity. Whoever arranged this had access to the house, the records, and the aftermath. And the nerve," I added. Wolfe opened his eyes. "Archie, the ashes are a substitution. The death may be as well. Either Caleb Vance escaped, or he was murdered elsewhere and replaced by a more convenient corpse. Either way," I said, "someone wanted him officially dead. And someone else," Wolfe said, "wanted him silent." The clock ticked. The orchids breathed. Outside, New York kept moving, unaware that a man had died in the wrong place, or perhaps not at all. I looked at the urn again. "What's next?" Wolfe lifted his beer. "Next, Archie, we discover what burned too cleanly." And that's when I knew the fire was just the beginning. Chapter 4, The Fire That Burned Too Clean. A fire that burns too clean is like an alibi that arrives early. It's helpful, impressive, and almost always dishonest. That was Wolfe's opinion, delivered from the red leather chair while he regarded his beer as if it were a cooperative witness. Mine was simpler. Someone had used fire the way other people use erasers, and they'd erased more than a body. Wolfe had decided, without leaving the house, naturally, that I should revisit the ruins of the Vance place. Again. He phrased it as confirming architectural inconsistencies, which is Wolfe speak for go get dirty while I think. Pay particular attention, he told me, to what was destroyed thoroughly and what was not. Like a fire with taste? I asked. Like a fire with instructions, Wolfe replied. So I went back upstate, this time armed with a flashlight, a notebook, and a growing dislike for soot. The site had been cordoned off tighter since my last visit, yellow tape fluttering like cheap bunting, but I flashed enough paperwork to convince the new guard that I belonged anywhere inconvenience existed. I spent an hour crawling around what had once been the study. Guest wing. The place where Julia Brandt swore Caleb had been working. The desk was gone, burned down to black suggestion. But the safe embedded in the wall. Warped, scorched, but unmistakably empty. That bothered me. Safes are stubborn. They don't burn easily. If there had been papers inside, ledgers, contracts, personal files, they should have left a mess of half-burned secrets behind. Instead, the safe was too clean. Not untouched. Emptied. I stood and scanned the floor. Most of the debris had been shoveled away, but near the corner, under a collapsed beam, I found something overlooked, a twisted metal clip, the kind used to bind thick stacks of paper. No paper. Just the clip. Someone had taken the contents before the fire. Or during it. Or the fire had been set after the contents were gone. On the drive back, I stopped at a payphone and called Wolfe. There was a safe, I said. Empty. Burned around, not through. Whatever mattered wasn't there. Wolfe grunted approval. What was spared? The foundation. The guest wing took the worst of it. Main house burned theatrically. Like a show. A performance, Wolfe said. For whom? For whoever wanted the death official, I replied. Precisely, Wolfe said. Return. Back at the brownstone, the orchids were in full voice, sweet, rich, and faintly smug. Wolfe had eaten and was more charitable than usual, which still put him well below normal human warmth. Archie, he said, you will now find Dr. Sloat. Dentist, I said. Gold crowns. Indeed, Wolfe replied. Either he exists conveniently, or he does not. Dr. Sloat's office was on the east side, neat and antiseptic, with magazines no one ever finished. He was a small man with nervous hands and an expression that suggested regret had been his companion for years. Yes, he said after I identified myself, Caleb Vance was my patient. When? I asked. Several times. For cleanings. Any crowns? He shook his head. No. That's odd, I said. Records show too. His face went pale. That's impossible. I leaned closer. Someone submitted dental records identifying a body with 2 gold crowns as Caleb Vance. That wasn't from me, he said quickly. I never did any crowns for him. Never recommended them. Who has access to your records? I asked. Only my assistant. And, he stopped. And? I prompted. And Leonard Rourke, he said. He called after the fire. Said he needed confirmation. He asked for copies. Did you give them? I asked. I refused, Sloat said. Then I found copies missing. Did you report it? He looked at the floor. No. I left him sweating in his guilt and went straight back to Wolfe. Well? Wolfe asked. No crowns, I said. Rourke tried to manufacture dental proof. Stole records or substituted them. Wolfe nodded slowly. A false identification requires documentation. A fire eliminates objections. Which means, I said, whatever Caleb Vance kept in that safe was worth killing, or vanishing, for. Or both, Wolfe said. The phone rang. Late-night calls have a way of sharpening the air. It was Eleanor Vance. They're watching me, she said. Who? I asked. I don't know, she whispered. But someone went through my apartment. Not to steal, just to look. I glanced at Wolfe. He was already listening. Did they take anything? I asked. No. But my brother's old letters, his personal papers, were disturbed. Stay where you are, I said. I'll be there. Wolfe shook his head. Archie. I know, I said. Careful. Eleanor's apartment smelled of fear and expensive soap. Drawers had been opened, papers shuffled. A search without urgency. Someone checking whether she had something dangerous. Did your brother keep business records at your place? I asked. Yes, she said. Years ago. When he didn't trust the office. Do you still have them? No, she said. He took them back. Or said he did. I examined the desk. A faint rectangle in the dust where something had been removed recently. Someone wanted to make sure you didn't have copies, I said. Her eyes widened. Copies of what? That, I said, is the question. On the way out, my phone rang again. Wolfe. Archie, he said, Rourke has just attempted to contact me. That is an error. What kind? I asked. The kind people make when they are nervous, Wolfe said. He wishes to discuss compensation. That's generous, I said. Also premature, Wolfe replied. Return immediately. Back at the brownstone, Rourke was waiting, tense, composed, smiling like a man selling safety. I believe, he said, this inquiry has gone far enough. On the contrary, Wolfe replied, it has barely begun. Rourke's eyes flicked to the urn. That is unpleasant. So is fraud, Wolfe said calmly. You arranged a false identification. I did nothing of the sort, Rourke snapped. You arranged, Wolfe continued, for a body to be substituted, dental records altered, and a fire to eliminate contradictory evidence. You then assumed control of a business whose founder was officially deceased. Rourke stood. This is outrageous. Sit, Wolfe said. Rourke sat. However, Wolfe added, I have not accused you of murder. Only of manipulation. Rourke exhaled, relief flashing before he could stop it. That was my favorite moment of the day. After he left, too quickly, too quietly, Wolfe turned to me. The fire, he said, was not meant to kill. It was meant to confirm. Confirm what? I asked. That Caleb Vance was no longer available to contradict, Wolfe said. Whether because he was dead, or because he had chosen to disappear. I frowned. So either he betrayed them, or they betrayed him. Wolfe closed his eyes. Betrayal, he said softly, is rarely unilateral. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent. Somewhere in the layers of ash and paper and silence, a truth was waiting, locked away like that empty safe. And whoever held the key was not done burning things yet. Chapter 5, Loyalty for Sale. If loyalty were a stock on the exchange, it would have crashed every time Nero Wolfe rang the doorbell. That afternoon, he rang it 3 times, figuratively speaking, by summoning 3 people to the brownstone in neat, orderly succession. Wolfe believes pressure works best when applied politely, like a thumb pressed slowly into a bruise. He did not call it interrogation. He called it conversation. I called it front-row seating. The orchids were in excellent form, which always put Wolfe in a benevolent mood, benevolent by his standards, which meant he was less likely to roar and more likely to dissect. First on the schedule was Julia Brandt. She arrived precisely on time, clutching her handbag as if it might bolt. Wolfe regarded her over steepled fingers, beer untouched, eyes heavy with thought. Miss Brandt, Wolfe said, you were Mr. Vance's secretary for how long? 8 years, she replied. I managed his correspondence. His schedule. His confidences. Indeed, Wolfe said. You were loyal. Yes, she said quickly. Too quickly. I leaned against my desk, enjoying myself quietly. Tell me, Wolfe continued, why you did not inform the authorities that Mr. Vance habitually slept in the guest wing. She blinked. I wasn't asked. An omission, Wolfe said mildly, is not a lie. But it can be more useful. Her face tightened. I assumed it didn't matter. It mattered, Wolfe said. Greatly. She glanced at me, then back at Wolfe. Mr. Vance trusted me. Did he trust you with documents? Wolfe asked. She hesitated. Sometimes. Documents he did not wish his partner to see. Her lips parted. Then closed. I can't discuss that. Wolfe nodded. You may go. She left in a hurry that smelled like fear mixed with protection. Protective, I said. Or purchased, Wolfe replied. Next came Marjorie Vance. She arrived draped in dignity and grief, the kind that photographs well. She sat straight-backed, hands folded, eyes dry. Wolfe offered no sympathy. He never does unless it's strategic. Mrs. Vance, Wolfe said, you inherited your husband's shares. Yes, she replied. And you allowed Mr. Rourke operational control. It was practical, she said. Leonard understands the business. Did your husband ever express doubt about that arrangement? Wolfe asked. Her eyes flickered. Caleb trusted Leonard. Trust, Wolfe said, is often extended past its expiration date. She stiffened. What are you implying? That your husband was preparing to change something, Wolfe said calmly. A will. A partnership. A loyalty. She laughed softly. That's absurd. Is it? Wolfe asked. Mr. Vance removed papers from his safe shortly before his death. She stood. This is offensive. You may also go, Wolfe said. She left with her pride intact and her composure cracked at the edges. Finally, Leonard Rourke. He arrived late. A mistake. Wolfe let him wait 10 minutes before acknowledging him. Mr. Rourke, Wolfe said, you have been loyal to Caleb Vance. Of course, Rourke replied. We built the company together. And now you control it alone, Wolfe said. With Marjorie's consent. Wolfe leaned forward slightly. Consent given under what conditions? Rourke smiled thinly. Grief. Indeed, Wolfe said. Grief is malleable. Rourke's jaw tightened. I'm not here to be accused. You are here, Wolfe replied, because loyalty is under examination. Rourke snorted. This is ridiculous. Mr. Rourke, Wolfe continued, did you know that Dr. Sloat denies providing any dental records indicating gold crowns? Silence. That is unfortunate, Wolfe said. It suggests forgery. Rourke stood abruptly. I've had enough of this. And yet, Wolfe said softly, you remain. Rourke froze. Then slowly sat back down. Tell me, Wolfe said, what documents Mr. Vance removed from his safe. Rourke's eyes flicked to the door. Answer, Wolfe said. I don't know, Rourke snapped. He was paranoid. About you? I asked pleasantly. Rourke shot me a look that could have peeled paint. He was considering dissolving the partnership, Wolfe said, watching him. Selling his shares. Leaving. Rourke laughed. Too loud. Impossible. Wolfe raised a finger. Miss Brant protected him. Mrs. Vance benefited from silence. You acquired power. Loyalty was negotiable. Rourke stood again. This is harassment. Wolfe nodded. You may go. After Rourke left, Wolfe leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. One of them, I said, almost broke. Yes, Wolfe said. But not yet. The phone rang that night, close to midnight. I answered. It was Julia Brant. He's alive, she whispered. Who? I asked. Caleb. My heart skipped a beat. Where? I don't know, she said. But he planned it. The fire. The disappearance. He said Leonard was stealing from him. And you helped? I asked. I helped him leave, she said. I didn't help him die. I glanced at Wolfe, who was already listening. Why tell us now? I asked. Because someone is trying to kill him for real, she said. And if they succeed, it will be my fault. The line went dead. Wolfe closed his eyes. Loyalty, he said quietly, is for sale. But the price varies. So Caleb betrayed them, I said. And someone betrayed him back. Wolfe nodded. Or intends to. Outside, the city slept uneasily, like a dog that knows the night isn't over yet. And neither was the fire. Chapter 6, The Second Set of Ashes. If there's one thing New York is good at, it's hiding people in plain sight. 8 million faces, give or take a conscience, and half of them are pretending to be someone else. Wolfe knows this. That's why he hates leaving the house, he prefers his lies stationary. The morning after Julia Brant's midnight confession, the brownstone smelled of orchids and inevitability. Wolfe had already eaten. He sat in the red leather chair like a judge waiting for the courtroom to fill itself. You believe her, I said. I believe, Wolfe replied, that she believed she assisted an escape, not a murder. That's comforting, I said. For her. For us, Wolfe corrected. It introduces a second set of ashes. I blinked. You're saying the urn contains a substitute body, Wolfe finished. But the substitute was not random. Someone died to make Caleb Vance officially dead. And that someone, I said, didn't volunteer. Wolfe's fingers steepled. Precisely. He slid a paper across the desk. I want you to find a man named Thomas Keene. Occupation? I asked. Former night caretaker at the Vance country house, Wolfe said. Dismissed quietly 3 weeks before the fire. That's thoughtful timing, I said. I grabbed my hat and headed out, because this was one of those mornings where sitting still felt dangerous. Keene wasn't hard to find if you knew how to look: cheap diners, cheaper rooms, and a paper trail that tried too hard to look accidental. I found him in a third-floor walk-up that smelled like boiled cabbage and resignation. He answered the door with a chain still on. Yes, he said. Archie Goodwin, I replied. Private detective. You worked for Caleb Vance. His eyes flicked left, right. He didn't open the door. You were fired, I continued. But not for incompetence. He swallowed. I don't want trouble. Trouble, I said gently, already knows your address. The chain came off. Inside, the room was bare except for a bed, a chair, and a bottle that had seen better days. Keene sat heavily. They paid me to keep quiet, he said. Who? I asked. Mr. Rourke, he said. After the fire. About what? I asked. He hesitated. About the man in the guest wing. What man? I asked. The one who wasn't Mr. Vance, he said. My stomach tightened. You saw him. Night before the fire, Keene said. I heard shouting. Went to look. There was a man in the guest wing, smaller than Mr. Vance. Arguing with him. About what? I asked. Money, Keene said. And papers. Did you recognize him? I asked. Keene shook his head. No. But after the fire, Mr. Rourke told me to forget it. Paid me. Did you see the body? I asked. Keene's face went gray. After the fire. I saw them carry someone out. Not Mr. Vance. This man had gold teeth. There it was. I left Keene with instructions to stay put and went straight back to Wolfe. He listened without interruption, eyes closed, beer untouched. The caretaker saw the substitute, Wolfe said. And the dental anomaly. So someone killed Keene's mystery man, I said. Burned him. Used him. Yes, Wolfe said. But they did not anticipate chemical analysis. Who was he? I asked. Wolfe opened his eyes. That is the second essential question. The answer came faster than expected. Inspector Kramer arrived that afternoon with a file and a headache. We got a missing person, he said. Dock worker. Name of Samuel Pike. 42. Vanished the same week as the fire. Dental records show 2 gold crowns. Wolfe nodded once. He was murdered. Kramer scowled. You sure? Yes, Wolfe said. And cremated as Caleb Vance. Kramer swore. So Vance is alive. Almost certainly, Wolfe said. Then where is he? Kramer demanded. Wolfe looked at me. Archie? Someone's trying to kill him, I said. Julia Brandt says so. Wolfe nodded. Then he is in hiding, and in danger. That evening, Wolfe summoned Julia Brandt again. She arrived pale, trembling, but resolute. You helped Mr. Vance disappear, Wolfe said. Explain. He was being robbed, she said. Leonard was bleeding the company. Caleb found proof. He was afraid. So he arranged his own death, I said. Yes, she said. The fire was supposed to cover his escape. The body. I didn't know there was a body. Wolfe's voice hardened. Who arranged the substitute? She shook her head. Not Caleb. He wouldn't kill an innocent man. Someone did, Wolfe said. Her eyes filled with tears. Then they betrayed him. Yes, Wolfe said softly. They did. The phone rang, late, sharp. I answered. A man's voice. Low. Controlled. Mr. Goodwin, he said. Tell Nero Wolfe to stop. I felt the hairs rise on my neck. Or what? Or there will be another set of ashes, the voice said, and hung up. I related to Wolfe. He closed his eyes. The betrayer is accelerating. So what now? I asked. Now, Wolfe said, we assemble the truth. Quietly. Before fire is used again. Outside, the city glowed and breathed, unaware that one man had died to make another invisible, and that betrayal had not finished burning. Somewhere, Caleb Vance was alive. And someone wanted him turned into ashes for real. Chapter 7, The Locked Truth. If Nero Wolfe ever gets around to bottling silence, he'll make a fortune selling it by the ounce. That evening, the brownstone was saturated with it, the kind that settles into the furniture and waits. The orchids upstairs were fragrant but restrained, as if they too understood that something delicate was about to be dissected. Wolfe had issued invitations. Not requests. Invitations from Nero Wolfe have a way of arriving like subpoenas dressed in polite language. By 8 o'clock, the chairs in the office were occupied in a neat semicircle that made my skin itch with anticipation. Leonard Rourke sat stiffly, hands folded, face arranged into professional neutrality. Marjorie Vance occupied the chair opposite him, chin high, eyes cool, grief worn like tailored silk. Julia Brant sat slightly apart, pale and rigid, loyalty and terror fighting it out behind her eyes. Inspector Kramer loomed near the door, pretending he wasn't enjoying himself. Wolfe, of course, did not move. He presided from his chair as if the room were an extension of his intellect. Ladies and gentlemen, Wolfe began, I have invited you here to resolve a matter of misrepresentation. Rourke snorted. This again? Yes, Wolfe replied mildly. Again implies unfinished business. I leaned against my desk, arms crossed, watching faces instead of words. Words lie. Faces get lazy. Mr. Rourke, Wolfe said, you have maintained that Caleb Vance died in his country house fire. He did, Rourke said. And yet, Wolfe continued, the ashes are not his. Marjorie stiffened. Julia closed her eyes. Kramer cleared his throat. That's established. Good, Wolfe said. Then we may proceed without illusion. Rourke leaned forward. If Caleb staged his own disappearance, that is hardly my responsibility. Indeed, Wolfe said. However, the death of Samuel Pike is. The name landed like a dropped plate. Marjorie frowned. Who? A dock worker, Wolfe said. 42. Gold crowns. Missing. Conveniently cremated. Julia's hand flew to her mouth. Rourke's eyes hardened. You can't prove that. I can, Wolfe said. But tonight is not for proof. It is for understanding. I could see it now, the pressure Wolfe loved, slow and merciless. Mr. Vance, Wolfe continued, removed documents from his safe shortly before his disappearance. Documents indicating financial impropriety. Rourke's jaw clenched. He trusted you, Wolfe said. He suspected you. That's a lie, Rourke snapped. Is it? Wolfe asked. You attempted to manufacture dental records. You silenced a caretaker. You discouraged inquiry. Marjorie turned sharply. Leonard? Rourke stood. This is absurd. Sit, Wolfe said. Rourke hesitated, then sat. That hesitation told me more than a confession would have. Mrs. Vance, Wolfe said, you benefited from your husband's death. Her eyes flashed. I loved my husband. I do not dispute affection, Wolfe replied. I question awareness. She looked away. Miss Brandt, Wolfe said gently, you assisted Mr. Vance's escape. Yes, she whispered. To save him. And you believed no one would be harmed, Wolfe said. Yes. Belief, Wolfe said, is not a defense. But it is informative. He paused, letting the room breathe. The truth, Wolfe continued, is locked. Not by a safe or a fire, but by fear. Each of you knows a portion. None knows all. I shifted my weight. The air felt electric now. Someone, Wolfe said, recognized that Caleb Vance's disappearance created opportunity. Control. Silence. Rourke laughed bitterly. You're accusing me of murder. I am accusing no one, Wolfe said. Not yet. Kramer frowned. Wolfe. Patience, Wolfe said. He turned his gaze slowly around the room. The plan required 3 elements, a convincing death, eradication of documents, and a beneficiary prepared to act swiftly. Marjorie's fingers tightened on her purse. Yet, Wolfe went on, there is a flaw. The plan assumed compliance. Silence. Gratitude. Julia looked up sharply. Someone, Wolfe said, grew impatient. The disappearance was not enough. The betrayer required permanence. My phone rang. Every head turned. I answered. Goodwin, I said. A pause. Then, you're running out of time. Same voice as before. Calm. Confident. Where is he? I asked. A soft chuckle. Close. The line went dead. I looked at Wolfe. He nodded slightly. The betrayer, Wolfe said, is present. Rourke surged to his feet. This is insane. And yet, Wolfe said, you remain. Kramer stepped forward. Wolfe, if you've got. I will have, Wolfe said calmly. Tomorrow. The room erupted, voices overlapping, accusations half-formed, fear leaking out in small, ugly ways. Wolfe raised a hand. Enough, he said. Silence returned, obedient as a trained animal. Tonight, Wolfe concluded, you will all leave this house. Tomorrow, I will tell you which of you converted betrayal into murder. Rourke glared. Marjorie trembled. Julia wept quietly. As they filed out, I stayed put. You're sure? I asked. Yes, Wolfe said. The pattern is complete. And Caleb? I asked. He will come, Wolfe said. Or he will be brought. I looked at the empty chairs, the faint scent of orchids, the urn sitting quietly like a punctuation mark. The fire, I said, was just the opening act. Wolfe nodded. Ashes obscure. Truth accumulates. Outside, New York waited, taxis prowling, windows glowing, secrets breathing behind brick and stone. Somewhere, a man who had died once was about to face the consequences of surviving. And someone else, someone who thought betrayal could stay buried, was about to learn how wrong that was. Chapter 8, What the Ashes Revealed. Morning in the brownstone arrived with the scent of orchids and inevitability. Wolfe was already dressed, already fed, already thinking. When Nero Wolfe reaches that state, the rest of the world exists only to be corrected. I was nursing coffee and impatience when the doorbell rang on schedule. Inspector Kramer entered first, coat rumpled, jaw set. Behind him came Leonard Rourke, Marjorie Vance, and Julia Brandt, each carrying a different flavor of dread. Last through the door was a man who stopped short when he saw Wolfe. Caleb Vance. Alive. Thinner. Older. But unmistakably present. Julia gasped. Marjorie froze. Rourke went pale in a way that suggested the blood had reconsidered its loyalty. Wolfe did not react. He rarely rewards drama. Be seated, Wolfe said. No one argued. Caleb Vance stood awkwardly until Wolfe looked at him. You too, sir. Resurrection is not an excuse for discourtesy. Caleb sat. Wolfe folded his hands. This matter ends now. Kramer cleared his throat. Wolfe. Inspector, Wolfe said, you will be satisfied shortly. I leaned against my desk, eyes moving, enjoying the moment the way a man enjoys a storm when he's indoors. Mr. Vance, Wolfe began, you arranged your own disappearance. Caleb nodded. Yes. To escape betrayal, Wolfe continued. You discovered embezzlement. Caleb looked at Rourke. I trusted him. Rourke exploded. This is nonsense. Sit, Wolfe said. Rourke sat. You removed incriminating documents from your safe, Wolfe said to Caleb. You enlisted Miss Brandt's assistance. You planned a fire to confirm your death. Yes, Caleb said quietly. But I did not plan a murder. Correct, Wolfe said. That distinction is essential. Wolfe turned his gaze to Rourke. Mr. Rourke, Wolfe said, you realized too late that Mr. Vance intended to expose you. That's a lie, Rourke snarled. No, Wolfe said calmly. It is a motive. He continued, voice even, relentless. You discovered the planned disappearance. You recognized opportunity. A missing man cannot testify. A dead man cannot retract. Rourke shook his head. You can't prove. You procured a substitute, Wolfe said. Samuel Pike. A man desperate enough to be lured to the country house under false pretenses. Julia sobbed softly. You murdered him, Wolfe said. You placed his body in the guest wing. You ensured the dental markers would confirm a false identity. You set the fire after the body was placed, burning away the truth. Rourke leapt to his feet. That's insane. Sit, Wolfe said. Rourke did not. Kramer moved closer. You paid the caretaker to stay silent, Wolfe went on. You attempted to manipulate dental records. You encouraged the widow's ignorance. And when you learned Mr. Vance was alive. Wolfe paused. You attempted to finish the job. The room went silent. Rourke's mouth opened. Closed. His shoulders sagged. You think fire erases guilt, Wolfe said. It does not. It concentrates it. Rourke laughed suddenly, sharply. He deserved it. He was going to destroy everything. Caleb stood. You stole from me. I built that company. Rourke shouted. You betrayed it, Wolfe said. Kramer stepped forward. Rourke, you're under arrest. Rourke didn't resist. He looked at the urn on Wolfe's desk. All that trouble, he muttered. For ashes. Wolfe shook his head. Not ashes. Evidence. As Rourke was taken away, the room slowly exhaled. Marjorie sank into her chair. I didn't know, she whispered. I believe you, Wolfe said. Ignorance was your contribution. Julia wiped her eyes. I thought I was saving him. You did, Wolfe said. From one danger. Caleb approached Wolfe. I owe you my life. Wolfe regarded him coolly. You owe society a correction. You will present yourself to the authorities. Voluntarily. Caleb nodded. I will. When they were gone, everyone except Wolfe and me, the office felt suddenly ordinary again. I looked at the urn. So those ashes belonged to a man betrayed twice, Wolfe said. Once by desperation. Once by greed. And betrayal, I said, turns everything to ash. Wolfe lifted his beer. Ashes reveal what fire conceals. Outside, taxis moved, diners filled, phones rang. New York went on, indifferent as ever. I picked up my coat. Case closed. Wolfe closed his eyes. The case is concluded. The truth, however, persists. I paused at the door. You know, boss, most people use fire to destroy. Yes, Wolfe said. The intelligent use it to expose. I stepped into the city, leaving the orchids, the chair, and the ashes behind. Another betrayal solved. Another truth scraped out of the ruins. And New York, as always, kept burning quietly.